Hello, what we're going to be covering in this video is lesson 4.4, scroll views. Instead of doing the lab at the end of the chapter, what we will be doing is we're going to be creating the application that is presented as we walk through the chapter itself. So the first step we need to do, if we go to the next page, 581, basically what we're going to be doing is we're going to be using the scroll view to go ahead and create an application where if some of the information is you cannot see on the screen, you're able to scroll that view and see that information. So what we're going to be doing is we're just going to be creating an application that includes the first name, last name, address lines 1 and 2, city, state, zip, and phone number. And basically what'll happen there is for some devices, depending upon how you're looking at the form itself, the scroll view may become activated, and what you'll do is you'll scroll up or down to see the additional information on your screen. So in order to get started, what we're going to do is we're going to go into Xcode and we're going to create a scrolling form. So let me just go click on next and we'll type in scrolling form for our application name. We do not want to use core data, include unit test or include UI test checked. So we'll click on next. We'll go ahead and save it out to our desktop. I'll go ahead and replace the current one that I have out there. And now we have our form. So we're going to start on our main storyboard. So the first thing we're going to do is you're going to go ahead and lay out a scroll view, and we're going to adjust the size of the scroll view to match the entire size of the screen, and then we're going to go ahead and add 4 constraints where each one of the constraints is set to 0. So let's go back into Xcode and get that completed. First thing we need to do is we need to go ahead and search for a scroll view. I'll drag it onto the screen itself. We'll position it and then we'll drag it so it encompasses the full screen. I'll go ahead and click on my Add New Constraints, and we'll go ahead and make sure that all of the constraints are set to 0 and they've been set, and I'll click on Add 4 Constraints. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and use a stack view, and basically that stack view will contain all of our content. So first thing we need to do is we can go ahead, go into our object library, click on stack view. We're going to do a vertical one, so I'll just go ahead and drop it in, and we want to do the same thing that we did with our scroll view with our stack view. As you can see underneath, our stack view is underneath our scroll view. Looks like we're having some problems with constraints. Don't worry about that right now. When we add the rest of the content to the view, we will not see those constraints. Errors will get eliminated. So again, we'll just go ahead and make sure all 4 are set to 0, and we'll go ahead and click, and now you see we have the little red X where we actually have some where it comes up with some missing constraints. Again, that'll get corrected in the future. So after we've completed that step, the next step is what we want to do is we want to create a view underneath the stack view, and within that view we're going to add a label and a text field. So let's go back into our Xcode, and I need to go ahead and search for a view. And it's not going to be a controller. So what we need to do is, you can see all the items in yellow are actually controllers. I'm not adding a view controller. We're adding a view object which represents a rectangle region in which it draws and receives events. So I'll go ahead and I'll drop that in. Once I've dropped that in, what we need to do is we need to add a label to it. So I'll search for my label. I'll go ahead and drop that in. And they say to go up to the upper left-hand corner and add it in. I'm going to add it in just a little bit lower on the screen. So I'll go ahead and add my label. And then we're going to add a text field after that. So I'll go ahead, drop my text field in. Now my text field has been dropped in. And what we want to do finally then is now you can see over on the left-hand corner in our view controller scene hierarchy, we have our stack view, we have our scroll view. Underneath that we have our stack view. Then we have our view, which contains both a label and a text field. So what I want to do is I want to make sure my view is highlighted, and I'm just going to go ahead and decrease the size of that a little bit. Okay, so what we need to do is we need to go ahead and add some constraints next. So let's go ahead and move on over to the next page. So we're going to add 4 constraints for our label. The left, bottom, and right are going to be set to 8, but I'm just going to go ahead, my top one, I'm going to increase the size of that constraint. So let's go back in to our Xcode, click on my label, make sure I have my label selected. You could do it one of 2 ways. You can click on it in the actual view controller, or you can click on it underneath the hierarchy. I've selected it. And I'll keep the top at 28. I'll go ahead and constrain the bottom, left, and then right to 8. And then I'll constrain the top to 28. And I'll add my constraints. And then I'm going to do that for the text field next. And let me see, what do they specify for my text field? So the one thing we do not need to do is we do not need to constrain the top, because we've already added the constraint from our label to our next object. But we're going to do the left, right. We're going to set the leading and trailing edges to 8, and then the bottom to 20. So let me go back into Xcode, make sure my label is selected, and we'll keep we won't constrain the top. Left and right will get set to 8, and then bottom will get set to 20. And we'll go ahead and add those 3 constraints. After we add those, as you can see, basically what that has done is that has eliminated the errors that we're currently seeing for our constraints. So the next thing we need to do after that is we need to go ahead and set up a constraint for each one of our view objects. So if we go back in to the book, and what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that our view has an equal, each one of our views have an equal width with our actual main view object. So in order to add that constraint, what we need to do is we need to go into Xcode, click on our view underneath our stack view, click on Control, drag it up to our view, main view object below our view controller, and set it to equal widths. Okay, so now we have that set. So the next thing we need to do is we need to go ahead and populate our view controller with the rest of our view objects. So we have one for the first name. We're going to add one for the last name, the 2 address lines, the city, state, zip, and the phone number. So that looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 more objects. So I'll just go ahead and click on Command C, make sure that first one's selected, and then I'll click on Command V 7 times. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So you want to make sure that all of those view objects are laid out in our stack view. So the way to do that is just select the first one, click on Command C, just leave that one selected and click on Command V 7 more times so we get the rest of our views that we need to complete this exercise. So this is the end of part 2 of part 1 of the lecture. So what we're going to do in part 2 is we're going to add information for each one of our labels in our text field for the placeholders, and then after that we're going to go ahead and run the application. So we'll be back with you with part number 2.